Thanks for tuning in to watch The Ordinary Filmmaker. It's Monday, October the 25th, 2021. Let's take a little bit of a trip back in time. Sony announced the Alpha 1 back in January of this year, and it got some pretty explosive specifications. It had a 50 megapixel sensor, and this was a lot for a flagship mirrorless camera, what is usually used for shooting sports and other fast action photography. 50 megapixels. Not only that, it could capture a staggering 30 frames per second at 50 megapixels. And it could also do 8K up to 30 frames per second like the Canon EOS R5. Now, a camera like this with these specifications was only possible with the deployment, the innovation that can be found in a backside illuminated stacked sensor. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, Nikon started teasing about their new flagship full-frame mirrorless camera, again aimed at fast action and sports photography. Now, this camera has a slightly smaller amount of megapixels, 45 megapixels, but it can also produce 8K DCI video at around 20 frames per second. Again, this camera has a backside illuminated stacked sensor. But where's Canon in all of this? Where's Canon's flagship camera? Well, the 1DX Mark III is a DSLR, and that came out almost 2 years ago. Or I should say it was announced almost 2 years ago. We have the Canon EOS R3, which, while has been announced, doesn't ship for another month. 8K video? Nope. Backside stacked illuminated sensor? Yes, it has that. But what about frame rates? What about all that other stuff? Well, it has a 24.2 megapixel sensor, not a 45, not even a 50. This is not Canon's flagship camera, although it's probably one of the best cameras you can get now if you want to do sports or fast action photography, especially with its new autofocus system, capturing not just birds, humans, and other animals, but also vehicles. And of course, Nikon saying, hey, we can do motorcycles as well. They can probably do boats, I wouldn't be surprised. So, this is where we are today. We don't have any development announcement for the Canon EOS R1, and in the last several months, we haven't received any specifications whatsoever. As I talked right at the beginning, I'm going to talk about the rumored specifications for the Canon EOS R1, and I'm going to pull 3 separate articles, 2 from Canon Rumors and 1 from Canon Watch. Now, that first one from Canon Watch came out on March the 4th, not long after Sony released the Alpha 1 for sale. These are some rather strange and grandiose specifications. In fact, what it seems like, and I said this way back then, is it seems like somebody thought, what could be in the R1? What would be some of the best specifications? Let's pull some stuff from the Sony, let's pull some stuff from Nikon, Canon, and let's bake it into one, and this is what I think would be a great set of specifications. And then that person probably sent them off to Canon Watch and said, hey, here's a rumor. I didn't believe it. It hasn't been validated, and even Canon Rumors said at the same time that if this set of specifications had shown up in his inbox, he wouldn't have done anything with it. And even to today, October the 25th, we haven't received any validation on this. So it's a CR0, but let's have a look. The Canon EOS R1, according to Canon Watch, or their source, will have an 85 megapixel sensor. No mention of back illuminated or whether it's a stacked sensor, but 85 megapixels at 20 frames per second. Want 40 frames per second? No problem, but you're going to have to settle for 20 megapixels. But it does have a few other rumors that seem to make sense, like it's going to have a global shutter and it's going to have Canon's, well, it's not new quad pixel autofocus, Canon's patented and rumored quad pixel autofocus. The ISO range seems a little strange. It goes to 1,638,000, but starts at around 160. Now, I would expect it to be around 50 or 100 and go to maybe 1,600,000, but to start at 160 seems a little strange. Now, one other thing this tells me, if this is faintly true, is this further points to it has to have some sort of backside illuminated stacked sensor. And why is that, you asked? Well, to get these frame rates and to get such low light performance is going to be impossible on an 85 megapixel sensor. You see the photodiodes, the width of them can't be more than 2 micrometers, and in fact might be a little bit less, down to about 1.6. And the problem is, as you get smaller, your low light performance really drops off, the noise increases, and what you what a backside illuminated sensor does, instead of having the light pass through multiple layers, hitting electrodes, or not electrodes, hitting electrical stuff on the way down, or metal, you flip that sensor around so it's only going through a single layer, and you're getting much better low light performance. But also, another big thing about backside illuminated stacked sensors is the readout time is significantly faster. I mean, look at the A9. It was able to perform readouts at 20 times previous cameras. Now, granted, it's a stacked sensor as well, so you've got the... Well, I'm not going to get into all the details here because this is not about Sony, but backside illuminated stacked sensors are what is needed for a camera of this caliber to be able to produce what they're rumoring it being able to do. What other specifications? Well, dynamic range is supposed to be 15.5 plus stops of dynamic range. It's going to have dual CF Express cards. And I know I'm missing something. Oh yes, the EVF. This sounds a little Sony-like. 9.44 million EVF. Blackout free, 120 hertz. So pretty good EVF. The LCD is going to be 3.5 inches and 9.33 megapixels, 1280 nits, and have an OLED touchscreen. And how much are we expected to pay for this wonderful camera according to Canon Watch? It's going to set you back a lot, $8,500, and if this was a real price, it'd probably be $8,499. What do you think? I have trouble with this one on so many fronts, but this is the most current one we have, and we've received no validation. We've received nothing ever since. And of course, you know what happened a month afterwards, right? We got the development announcement of the R3, and that changed the discussion. So now let's go back a couple of months to January the 21st, 2021. Craig at Canon Rumours, on the heels of the Sony Alpha 1 announcement, gave his editorial on what he thought would be on the Canon EOS R1. Now again, this is a CR0 because it doesn't come from a known source, even though Craig is reporting on himself. No sign of an 85 megapixel sensor. In fact, he doesn't say what size it's going to be, although he predicts it will be at least 45 megapixels because he also says it's going to have 8K. Craig strongly believes that there's no way that Canon's new flagship fast action sports stills hybrid camera is going to be anything less than 45 megapixels because that is what is required to produce DCI 8K on a pixel with this aspect ratio. Sorry, on a sensor with this aspect ratio. So 8K, most likely 30 frames per second, as well as 24 and 25. But what is the frame rate? We don't know. What about the shutter? Well, he believes that a global shutter makes sense based on patent announcements or patent filings. And he believes that the new quad pixel autofocus will also come as well because, well, again, there's a patent for that. We're supposed to get the Canon EOS R1 announcement in the second half of 2021. We're in the second half. In fact, we're in the final quarter of the year. We got 1 week and 2 months left. I don't see it happening. And this is nothing against Craig. We've had a horrible, horrible year in terms of shipping delays and everything else, supply shortages. We've got the Canon EOS R3 shipping on November the 26th. There's no way that Canon is going to show up their own camera. And if we look at history, we usually get a 1 series camera announced in January. But again, if we get the R3 shipped on November the 26th, I really think there's a really strong chance that we're not going to see any sort of R1 announcement until maybe June, May of 2022. The most credible rumor that we have for the Canon EOS R1 actually comes from October of 2020, and Canon Rumours rates this as a CR2. And what that means is it comes from a known source, a source that Craig has been able to validate against. Now in this one here, there is no 85 megapixel sensor, although we are supposed to be getting a new sensor and processor. And that makes a lot of sense. It's supposed to be a full upgrade over the 1DX Mark III, not just a mirrorless version of it, like Canon did in the EOS R as a mirrorless version of the 5D Mark IV. It is supposed to have a global shutter, and it's supposed to have a groundbreaking new autofocus system. Now, it doesn't say quad pixel autofocus, but that's probably what they're hinting towards. What else is this camera supposed to have? Well, the fastest frame rate of any Canon camera, stills hybrid camera ever made. And again, this one also says and announcement in the second half of 2021. I don't think that's going to happen, as I said in the last Rumour video. So here we are. We're in October the 25th of 2021. Sony got off to a lead back in January by announcing their new flagship stills hybrid camera capable of 50 megapixels at 30 frames per second at 50 megapixels and able to do 8K video at up to 30 frames per second. We've got the Nikon Z9, and we do know now, because of leaked materials, that this camera can do 8K at 60 frames per second. 8K at 60 frames per second, that's just staggering, the amount of data that must be going through. And yes, this is a backside illuminated stacked sensor, but wow. And 20 frames per second based on the last presentation I saw. If you want to watch this video here on the latest Nikon Z9 rumors, based on leaked materials by Nikon India, go take a look, but it's indicating 20 frames per second, not 30. But again, we don't know a whole lot. I've just got a few slides that indicate the speed of, the video frame rate and resolution, as well as 20 frames per second continuous autofocus at 45 megapixels. They could push 30, they could say do 30 at JPEG, I don't know, but let's wait until Thursday when we're supposed to get the announcement until we know for sure. But the R1, Canon has done a very good job of not leaking any information. This doesn't mean the R1 isn't on their roadmap. It doesn't mean they don't have a prototype. It doesn't mean they don't have detailed designs or even cameras they're testing in-house. Just think of the Canon EOS R3. Until about 8 hours before we actually had the development announcement, nobody knew anything about the R3, nowhere, nothing. Canon's leaking apparatus is completely sealed up, and we're getting very little out there. And these rumors seem a little bit dated. They seem old. It's hard to really understand what the Canon EOS R1 is meant to be. It's easier to look at the Alpha 1 and the Nikon Z9 and draw conclusions as to what the Canon EOS R1 will be able to do in terms of capabilities and performance than to look at the rumors. And one other thing that's really, really important is please like and subscribe. Your likes and subscribes really do help this channel grow. And also, I see it as a pat on the back when I wake up in the morning and I see how many new subscribers I have, how many new views and your comments. It really makes me feel good and encourages me to get out and do more. But what I want to know now is I want to get into a discussion with you, and I will comment, I'll reply, as you can see I do with all my videos. But what do you think the R1 is going to be like? What do you think are the specifications? Do you think we'll get a global shutter? What about quad pixel autofocus? What about 85 megapixel sensor, 45, 50, 55, or even 60? What about video? Will it top Nikon's 8K 60 frames per second? Will Canon allow 8K at 120 frames per second? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Give me your specifications. And I really do think at this point it's so much easier to look at the Alpha 1, which was announced way back in January, and the Nikon Z9, which was announced just recently. Well, the development announcement was just announced recently. I think it's easier to look at those and draw a conclusion as to what the R1 will have. But that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.